Russia's Legislative Assembly will vote on the recent annexation of Ukrainian land, while Kiev forces make ground in the east.
Residents in Mykolaiv react to the so-called referendums and the annexation of Ukrainian territories by Moscow. In Brazil, presidential hopefuls Lula da Silva and Jair Bolsonaro will have to battle it out again as the vote goes to the second round.
Russia's Legislative Assembly, the Duma, is set to vote on the annexations of the 4 Ukrainian regions which held so-called sham referendums. It comes after President Vladimir Putin formally announced their annexation in Moscow on Friday. Since then, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the strategic town of Lyman in eastern Ukraine has been fully cleared, and that its troops had pushed back Russian forces in several areas. Amid Kiev's gains in the east, Zelensky dismissed Moscow's recent attempts to illegally annex large swathes of his country.
Recently, someone somewhere held sealed-up referendums, and when the Ukrainian flag is returned, no one will remember the Russian farce with some pieces of paper and some annexations, except, of course, law enforcement agencies of Ukraine, because everyone who is involved in any element of aggression against our state will be held responsible for it.
Zelensky was speaking after hailing the launch of the Ukrainian Navy's first corvette warship in Istanbul. The ceremony took place with the First Lady of Ukraine and Ukraine's Navy commander in attendance.
The recent so-called referendums and annexation of Ukrainian territories were celebrated in Russia and condemned by most of the world. Vladimir rests in the yard of his apartment block, taking a break from cleaning the debris after rockets hit the building next to his home and the ground near the entrance. The low-precision strikes hit residential buildings, universities, hospitals and other public buildings.
What are the referendums for? They've already started to mobilize in the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions.
Референдумы для чего? Они уже начали призывать на оккупированных территориях. Вот они начали забирать мобилизовывать.
Ukrainians who live 100 kilometers from us.
Наших украинцев, которые вот живут за 100 километров отсюда, они уже должны идти воевать.
They already have to enroll to fight for Putin against us. How is that? What's he doing?
Такое
We can neither understand nor forgive it.
Mykolaiv region borders the occupied Kherson region. Since Russia took over those territories, Mykolaiv lost access to its clean water supply. Russian forces were pushed back from the city, but Mykolaiv is exposed to regular shelling, targeting civilians and infrastructure. Taxi driver Vladislav dismisses the importance of the so-called referendums. What can we talk about here? They invaded all of this. I think we don't have to talk about it at all. Which referendum? This is insane. It's our land. They're conquerors. They're occupiers. That's it. Dimitro, an economist from the local university, thinks that this move by the Kremlin might eventually help Ukraine restore the integrity of its territories. I was very irritated after the annexation of Crimea. All the Western leaders put it off the agenda. With his recent referendums, Putin entirely destroyed this exceptional status of Crimea. Now he returned it back to the agenda. And if we will liberate our cities and our land, Crimea will not be an exception. It will also have to return to be part of Ukraine again. The air alarms and explosions are frequent in Mykolaiv. Cardboard replacing blown-up window glass visible across the city. The anger against the invaders and its political and military actions are very strong here.
Exit polls suggest the centre-right GERB party of former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov has won the parliamentary elections in Bulgaria. However, the victory appears to be a narrow one, so a coalition government looks inevitable.
Thank you for your support, and we advise all colleagues, politicians, to think before they speak.
The former ruling party, called We Continue the Change, looks likely to finish second. Former Prime Minister Kirill Petkov has accepted defeat, and the party vows not to participate in a coalition with GERB.
We expect a difficult winter. I would like to wish the GERB party success in forming a government. Their success is success for all the people. We have values that we will not betray. We have voters, and we have made promises that we'll keep.
Meanwhile, opinion polls suggest that a third party, which is pro-Russian, the nationalist Revival, doubled its support in less than a year.
Yes, of course it's possible to have a government. The parties in parliament, apart from the Revival, have no lines of demarcation except personality.
Another pro-Russian party may also enter the Bulgarian parliament. Bulgarian Rise is headed by Stefan Yanev, a former caretaker prime minister who was replaced by Kirill Petkov after he called the war in Ukraine a special military operation.
Supporters of Lula da Silva celebrated after voting showed the leftist Workers' Party had beaten incumbent Jair Bolsonaro in the first round of Brazil's presidential election. Lula received more than 48% of the votes, while Bolsonaro received 43%. It now means they'll go head-to-head in a second round at the end of the month.
I always believed that we'll win these elections, and what I can tell you is that we're going to win these elections. This is just extra time for us.
Meanwhile, Bolsonaro says he's done better than the pollsters and analysts thought he would. Polls suggested Bolsonaro was close to losing the battle in the first round.
I think we'll form a good alliance to win the elections.
Despite building a devoted base of supporters, Bolsonaro's administration has been marked by incendiary speech, criticized over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, and having the worst deforestation in the Amazon rainforest in the last 15 years. Lula is credited with building an extensive social welfare program which helped lift tens of millions of people out of poverty, despite his administration's involvement in vast corruption scandals.
A humiliating climb down for the UK government. Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng has confirmed he will not proceed with plans to cut the 45p rate of tax for higher earners. Described as a tax cut for the rich, it was set out in his so-called mini-budget just 10 days ago and prompted turmoil in the markets. Now Kwarteng says we get it and we've listened, in response to fierce opposition from other parties and some Conservative MPs. The Chancellor is set to speak today at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham, where outside protesters have been voicing their concern about government plans to make over 50 billion euros worth of tax cuts. Plans which last week caused the sterling to slump to record lows and forced the Bank of England to launch an emergency intervention to stabilise the economy. The proposals were also criticised in a rare and damning interjection from the International Monetary Fund, who said they predict the move will increase inequality.
The death toll has risen to at least 76 people after Hurricane Ian hit Florida's coastal areas. The US Coast Guard continues in their efforts in the search and rescue operations. The powerful storms flattened whole neighborhoods and knocked out power lines when it made landfall last week.
Negotiations are ongoing after a 6-month ceasefire in Yemen between the government and the Houthi militia expired on Sunday. A UN special envoy met with officials in Yemen to discuss extending the nationwide truce, but an agreement has not yet been reached. Hundreds of thousands of people have died since the war began in 2014.